Welcome to Raiders on the Record, the podcast featuring Hastings High School athletics. I'm Athletic Director Trent Hansen. My colleague Tim Hanneberg and I work together to bring you the stories of Raider sports. We are thrilled to share conversations with the athletes, coaches, and alumni that represent Raider Nation. Check back weekly and be sure to share this podcast with your friends in the Raiders Network.
TJ Pottinger is a 2018 Raider graduate. During his time at Hastings High School, he participated in football, wrestling, and lacrosse. In football, he was a 3-year varsity letter winner and a 1-time captain. In wrestling, TJ was a 6-time varsity letter winner, multiple-time all-conference recipient, all-state his senior year taking 3rd place, and a 2-time captain. In lacrosse, he was a 4-year varsity letter winner and all-state 2nd team during his senior year. After high school, TJ attended NDSU, where he wrestled and was a pre-med major, and is now applying to med schools across the country. All right, here we are with TJ Pottinger. TJ, let's start from the beginning. Tell us about where you grew up at. Did you always live in Hastings? Did you eventually move to Hastings? Give us what that snapshot looked like of your life growing up.
Yeah, so I was born in Mankato, Minnesota, actually. And then I moved to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, I think in around preschool because of my dad's work. He works at lumber yards. He manages lumber yards. So that moved him to Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And then we moved, I think 1st grade, we moved to Hastings. They shipped him there to manage a lumber yard. And that was actually where he grew up and where he has 8 brothers and sisters that grew up there too, and a lot of them stayed there. So it was just kind of a coincidence that he got shipped over to Hastings, and yeah, that's where I spent from 2nd grade until I graduated high school. I went to Pinecrest Elementary School, and then the Hastings Middle School just across the street, and then on to Hastings High School.
What I've been doing too, think about any teachers that grew when you had them growing up. Anyone that had a really big impact on your life. I know a lot of them are still there. You just graduated a few years ago. So a lot of these teachers might be still at Pinecrest, might be at the middle school, might be at the high school. So anyone that had a big impact on your life that you would like to give a shout out to, and then we'll send them out to them, make sure they listen to this.
Yeah, man, I don't even know if she still teaches there, but my gym teacher in elementary school at Pinecrest, Mrs. Wilker, I thought she was super cool just because of how positive she was. She was always just so happy to see us exercising and playing games. And she had the coolest posters of the muscle groups when we were in elementary school, and they were dinosaurs. And I still remember my favorite muscle was the calf, because it was called the gastrocnemius. And she made us sing this really cool song with it. And this triceratops had the biggest calves. That was I can vividly picture that triceratops with the calf muscles still. And that was a big thing. I like gym class in elementary school. Middle school, my football coach, I guess, Mr. Hoffman, he was pretty awesome just because of how much energy and passion. And he always used big words like cardiovascular enhancement for conditioning. So and then I had him for a class, and I just liked how relatable he was to us.
Gotcha. Anyone at the high school?
Oh man, the high school. There's a lot of awesome teachers at the high school. Oh boy. Let's see here. Probably Mr. Olson for stats was pretty good. I was pretty nervous going into that stats class. I always like numbers, but I thought he was a pretty phenomenal teacher at explaining things, and he made it pretty easy to understand and helped me. I thought understand the class really well, and I still use stats every day in my job today, and then pretty much in every class I've ever had to take. So that was pretty fun to learn how to use numbers correctly.
I think that's gonna be the first and the last shout out for Mr. Olson. So
yeah, I don't
you
even
better
know
enjoy it. You better enjoy it. So this is mainly a sports podcast. So growing up, obviously sports was a huge impact or a huge part of your life, and obviously with your dad and his brothers and sisters growing up too. So What do you think one of your earliest or one of your best sports memories was growing up?
Oh, it's hard not to think about it uh, in relation to probably wrestling, just how close I was with my dad in it. And there's always this big wrestling tournament, the Min USA individual like state tournament that's in Rochester every year, and they're huge, like 64, like 128 man brackets. And I never placed at it until I think fifth grade. I finally placed at the state tournament. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world to finally have a medal. And I thought, I don't know, I was just really excited to finally have come away from a state tournament like that with a kind of a cool looking Minnesota looking medal on my chest for some reason. Yeah, it was sixth grade. And it's not that big of a deal now, but it meant the world to me then.
Yeah. So starting back when you're growing up, obviously, like I said, sports was a huge part of your life. Walk us through all the sports that you played growing up. I know it's probably a lot of them. I typically like to stop this kind of entering middle school. That's when most kids start getting a little more serious with sports too, and maybe start playing at a higher level. So let's walk through those sports. Stop at about seventh or eighth grade, and then, like I said, we'll start up from there again, and then go throughout your kind of later middle school and your high school career as well.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I played pretty much every sport. I played soccer, but that happened to be during football season, and I thought that was one of the coolest sports ever. And I thought I was going to be a pro football player for a long time, but definitely was not going to do that. But so I played football probably since second grade, like the first flag football league at the YMCA, and I always thought that was super fun. I played baseball for a long time. That was a big part of my childhood, especially just playing wiffle ball in my backyard with the big group of neighbors that we had. And that I feel like I grew as an athlete when I was younger in my backyard quite a bit. But then so I played a lot of baseball. But then a lot of the kids on my baseball team also played lacrosse at the same time when we were younger. I think it was fourth grade. And then so they convinced me to come out for lacrosse somehow, and my dad got pretty convinced, and he really started to like it too, and he actually coached even though he didn't know anything about it. And I obviously fell in love with it because it's so fast paced, and it was just it fit me a lot better, and there's a lot of contact. I like a lot of contact and physicality in the sports, and it was fast paced. So I ended up stopping playing baseball. I think the first year I started to play lacrosse then I did that from sixth grade, fifth or sixth grade on. And then I've been wrestling. I think I went to my first practice in first grade. And then ever since then, I've never stopped doing that just because it was really fun. It's really challenging. I think even during elementary school, I wouldn't even say I liked it a whole lot just because it's hard to lose a lot one-on-one, especially as a young kid in a sport. But I'm obviously super, super, super happy I stuck with it.
Yeah. So, like I said, starting in middle school, let's talk about the sports you played. Did you get really serious with some sports? Did you get brought up at a higher level with them too? So, walk through each of those years, and we could do it a couple different ways, whatever way you want, TJ. If you want to talk about one sport from seventh grade or eighth grade all the way to the senior year of high school, go for it. If you want to break down every year, maybe that's a little easier. Say seventh grade, I played this sport in the fall, winter, spring, and then break down any accomplishments that went along with those sports, all state placings, all conference, anything with the team, captains, anything like that. So, any way you want to roll with it, TJ. So, like I said, starting off in middle school, talk about the sports you played all the way through senior year of high school.
All right. So sixth grade, that was when I was the first year of middle school football. No, never mind. Sixth grade was still Little Raiders football, and then but sixth grade was the first year of middle school wrestling where you weren't part of like a youth club, and that was pretty awesome. I was pretty excited to win the Livingston Open. That's a pretty big deal for Hastings middle school. So I gotta
Mm-hmm.
win that bracket. I had that bracket I think under my bed for pretty much ever. I was really proud of that. And then I started to get really serious into lacrosse. I think my second year, and I got asked to do some like traveling lacrosse teams because I was told maybe you could get recruited if you were good enough, and started traveling around the country and get exposed to these college coaches that are more stationed in the East Coast for lacrosse. So I got really serious into that. I think the club was True Lacrosse was what it was called. And I wore a lot of those sweatshirts around school. And then 7th grade, I got pulled up to wrestle with the high school team. And I was really, really excited to do that because I remember we got to show up to some practices as like 6th graders at the end of the year. And I kind of saw it like as a tryout or like just to showcase how hard I was willing to work. And I don't think I was that like especially talented. Like I never really beat any of the high school starters, but I just think I worked really hard, and especially during like the sprints at the end of the practice is a good spot to showcase that as a 6th grader. So I was really excited. I think I wrestled in a couple of varsity matches as a 7th grader. So that was pretty fun. I still remember my record was 3-3. So not the best, but
Exactly 500. That's sweet.
yep, pretty exciting stuff. I got to wrestle at the Clash actually. I think that was my first match maybe.
No way.
Against a kid from California. Yeah, I got majored, but it was still cool to wrestle at the Clash. And
Yeah.
there was like, I don't know, there was a lot of big names at the Clash that year. And it was, I was like a little 7th grader and I was like watching these guys on Flow for like the past couple of years. So it was amazing to watch. And Luke Rao and Dan, like I got to watch them beat a couple like nationally ranked guys. So that was pretty fun. And then that was middle school football, and that was pretty fun because that was the first year I think we all the whole group of Hastings got to play together on like 1 or 2 separate teams instead of 8 separate like in-house teams. We got to play different schools, so that was pretty fun in middle school to actually get like a big team together and play with a large group of talent rather than spreading it out across 8 teams. And then I still was pretty serious about lacrosse. I think this is where lacrosse started to become probably my favorite sport for sure in 7th grade. And we traveled to like Maryland and Virginia that summer to play lacrosse. And it was just exciting because there was like college coaches kind of reaching out and saying, yeah, maybe they'd be interested. And I was like a 7th grader and I just started playing lacrosse. So it was just fun to think about college athletics in the future for the first time. And then 8th grade, it was the same year for football, basically. Little big team, and it was really fun. Football is a super fun sport. And then the wrestling season, I was really hoping to be the varsity starter, but I wasn't that year as an 8th grader. But I learned a lot about myself on the 9U wrestling circuit. So yeah, that was a grind too. So that was fun. I think I placed that year, and I didn't place the year before at 9U state as a 7th grader. So I was pretty excited. I think I wanted to win it pretty bad, but I think I took 4th.
You took 4th, yeah.
Yep.
I still remember that.
Yep. It was. I remember the 3rd place. I think I lost to that kid from Egan, like 3 or 4 times that year. So, but that was a big a growth year because I was really looking forward to maybe starting on varsity, but it just didn't work out that year, obviously. But I did enjoy that year, and then that year Trey moved to Hastings, and that was the first year I got to play football with him. So that was pretty exciting, and he got pulled up to wrestle too, obviously, on the high school team as an 8th grader. So that was pretty fun to do that together. And lacrosse is the same thing. Travel lacrosse. I got to play in a couple cool spots, I think in New York and stuff. So,
was there any middle school lacrosse through the school at that time, or no? No, so all just travel at the time.
Yeah,
okay.
It's all. And then there was like club, like Hastings school lacrosse. Like I don't know what it was just like club lacrosse, but it wasn't through the middle school. I still don't know if they have a middle school team.
Gotcha.
But, yeah, and then 9th grade, that was a freshman year of football, and that was pretty fun with Mr. Lutz and Mr. Welch. I think that was one of his last years or so coaching 9th grade football. And that was when we were basically all in one team for the first time instead of split across 2 teams. And then you got to be around like the varsity football players for the first time. So it was fun to be able to watch and learn from some of them, and eventually hopefully play on the same Todd Field as them one day. And 9th grade wrestling, I was finally a varsity starter, but it was a really rough year. I remember talking to you a lot about that year. I don't think I was 500, and I wrestled a lot of matches. So that was a bumpy year for wrestling. I don't know. I wasn't really big for the weight, but I felt like I was cutting a lot of weight that year. And I think I did. I think I cut down to 26 at the end of the year. And then I went up to 38 for sections, though, because Erickson came down. So yeah, that was a really rough year, but I'm glad I had it, because that summer after that, I thought I worked really, really hard in the weight training programs that you guys have in the summer. And that was awesome.
Yeah, I think I remember. I looked it up. Probably got the book here somewhere too behind me, but I think it was at your grad party. Your record was like 9 and maybe in the low 30s there. So it was not that great. And the one reason why we can laugh about it now is because of exactly what you're saying. You put in the work and the time in the summer, especially playing other sports as well in the weight room and getting better at the sport too. So the improvement that took place kind of makes that, looking back in that ninth grade year, even though you took your lumps, and as a freshman starting in the varsity lineup is very hard to do, especially as a ninth grader. But it's kind of funny to laugh about the record now because of the huge growth that took place, and we could talk about that in a little bit too. But I just think looking back on it, it's kind of comical now.
Yeah,
So
for sure. And it's like a huge part of who I am. And I wouldn't have been the wrestler I was even the next year or anything like that after
for
that.
sure.
'Cause it was a motivating winter. It was a long winter, but it motivated me for sure that summer.
Yeah.
It even motivated me into the spring season of lacrosse. I think I played I played a lot as a freshman on the lacrosse team. I was a starter. I think I was the team MVP. I think all 4 years. So I was the team MVP that year, and it was
This was varsity lacrosse there, ninth grade.
yeah.
Okay.
So and I took a lot of face-offs and played a lot of defensive midi. So that was really fun to play, like on Todd Field, for the first time as a varsity athlete, after watching a lot of lacrosse and football games as a middle schooler and elementary schooler. So that was fun. I got like all conference and the first like taste of success, I guess, on a varsity sport. So that was pretty exciting, and I loved lacrosse. It was really exciting. And then that summer, obviously, I really enjoyed. I like fell in love with the weight room a lot that summer, and I went up a couple weight classes for wrestling the next year and had a little more success. I still remember the Christmas tournament was just that was a fun tournament my sophomore year. It's not a fun tournament every year, but my sophomore year, it was pretty fun. I think I finally placed, and it was good. I qualified for the state tournament, which was pretty fun to do. And looking back on it, I wish I didn't just enjoy it for being there, because I felt like I was pretty competitive with all the guys that placed at state that year. And I think I fractured my elbow and tore some ligaments in it the first round against a kid from Elk River. So that was a bummer. I wish I was winning at that point in the match, and then maybe could have finished it. But yeah, so that bummed elbow. But that was a really good year of wrestling. I finally got a little bit of success. It wasn't an outstanding year, but I was just happy. I was excited that I qualified for the state tournament. And I wasn't really cutting a ton of weight that year either. And I think that might have helped too. And then previously, that football season was really fun too, because I got pulled up as a 10th grader and got to play some a lot of defensive back on the varsity football team, and that was exciting. I remember McClay texting me like the night before my first start, and he said, like, relax, you wrestled in the section team finals to go to state last year, and I think I pinned a kid from Farmington. He was not very good. And obviously,
I remember that though, but it was a huge win. It's it doesn't really matter about who you're wrestling, but you really stepped up for the team in that team section finals and got a huge pin for the team. Then we didn't win as a team, but you really did your job as a teammate. So in a huge moment. So
yeah, it was probably the biggest stage like I wrestled on that year for sure. So it was exciting to do something for the team that year. And then when he texted me that gave me a lot of confidence. I was like, yeah, I have been like in the section finals. This is like a regular season football game. And that was exciting because there's a little bigger crowds at varsity football games than like your 10th grade or 9th grade games on like Thursday afternoons. So that that was pretty fun.
So then you roll into 10th grade lacrosse and with that kind of broken arm, and the kind of tore up elbow here. So what was that process like, and the recovery process, and staying motivated, staying mentally tough, and thinking about that, so you started your 9th grade year, and then you're kind of rolling into the 10th grade season with a big injury, so how did you stay motivated? Were you able to play at all? Did you come back? What did you do to be able to play in that season? So talk us through that process.
Yeah, so I think I missed the first half of the season, which is a bummer because I really liked lacrosse. And the doctor basically told me I couldn't, like, I literally couldn't move it like very much. I could only move it to do normal stuff. I couldn't like lift anything, and I should just rest it because that was what was going to be best. I couldn't do any like rehab exercises because it just needed to rest. So that was really hard because I really started to enjoy the weight room and that thing. And then lacrosse, you need like two hands, but I pretty much played one-handed by myself for 2 months, and I think my that hand it was my right hand got really strong, and that's an important hand for like face-offs in lacrosse. So it did benefit me, and I just tried to remind myself of my goals every day. I would still show up to practice every single day and try and be the first one there and last one to leave, and always put in as many reps as I possibly could in those practices. And just because I knew I was going to be back eventually that season, even if I wasn't going to be able, and then especially if I knew I wasn't going to be competing like that week or the week after, because I still had another month. You could train really hard and get in really good shape and run a lot even with a broken elbow. So
I think that's pretty cool. Once again, to highlight what you're just talking about there, TJ, where even though with your injury, you're not be able to, you can't practice, you can't participate in games, obviously. So you're still the first one there, the last one off the field, and one of your, I wouldn't say weaknesses, but an area where you can definitely improve. And you worked for countless amount of hours, day after day, and then you turn that weakness into a strong point in your game. So I think that's pretty powerful for anybody going out, or anybody out there, where you have those setbacks, you can turn those setbacks into a positive moment and learn from them, grow from them. So I think that's really cool.
yeah, for sure. It
Yeah.
was a injuries always can make you a little bit better, and it's nice to have a mental break sometimes just from competing,
Hmm.
and always be in like competition mode and ready to go. So it was a good little mental break, I think, for me in the middle of my high school
For
career.
sure. And we roll right in 11th grade here.
Yeah, I think football I got a little bigger, so I got to play a little bigger position as a strong safety, and I still think that's the coolest position in football. So that was really fun. My junior year, because you don't really get blocked by any big linemen. You just have smaller receivers try to come out and block you, and then you can
Mhm.
still in the play a lot. Uh, and then junior year of wrestling, I think that it was kind of the same story as my sophomore year, where I qualified for the state tournament, and I was excited. And looking back, I just wish I wasn't happy, just happy to be there. And I think I could have done a lot, but it was a really bad first round. I lost to somebody I shouldn't have in the first round, for sure. I should not have lost that. And then obviously it's like the one and done. He lost the next round, so then I was eliminated, and that was really tough. That one stung a lot because I did really want to place, but I still feel like I was just kind of happy to be at the state tournament, which is a big bummer. But so that was not fun. That state tournament, I remember. Oh, we we have some good stories about a certain spot at the at the XL.
Yeah, you stayed in this one spot for about 2 hours, maybe, contemplating that match still. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
still remember that. But I do remember though, still, just a story about that as well. The next morning, you called me, and you were down in the lobby. Well, you were in the lobby because you just got done with a workout, and this was at about 5:30 the next day. So, I think just once again, it goes back to your 10th grade year, where you got injured and you turn that injury into a time where you can work on things, some areas where you were lacking, and then the next year, you have a setback once again with wrestling, and then the training never stops with you. You're up the next day, working out in the morning. I just think it says a lot about your character and who you are as a person, that you're able to do those things and just keep on going forward and forward, and never using them as failures or setbacks, you're just always constantly learning from them. And I think eventually, it does pay off for you. So
Yeah, for sure. Just always trying to get better. I think every day. Sometimes it's good to tone it back a notch. I learned, but yeah, in high school that was definitely my thing. It was just every day
mhm,
get up early and try and get better. So
for sure. So then we get into lacrosse, and obviously, you started ninth grade. You got a little bit of 10th grade, injury free, kind of going into 11th grade lacrosse. So talk to us about that season, what that was like.
yeah, so that was a good season. I think I played uh really really good that spring for the team. I was all conference and the team MVP, and I was really excelling at lacrosse, and then I had a really I think I was honorable mention all state, uh for sure all state my senior year. I don't know about junior year, but then I played on a really good club team Minnesota, my junior year summer of lacrosse, and I got to be in front of a lot of college coaches. And that was when the recruiting aspect of lacrosse really started to pick up. And I ended up committing to a school in South Carolina to play Division I lacrosse that summer. Uh, and I was really excited to do that, and just to have several different recruiting options from the lacrosse standpoint, because I did really love lacrosse, and I spent a lot of year round, basically since sixth grade, since I started. So even during like wrestling and football, it was constant like lacrosse practices and practicing on my own in my garage. So it was exciting to see that finally pay off. And then so I committed there, and I thought I was going to play lacrosse in college, and uh, but I guess it was the football season first. That football season was pretty fun. This senior year, I knew I wasn't going to play football in college, but it was still fun to try. We weren't very good my senior year, but it was still really fun. Uh, I got to play a lot of I think I finally played offense my senior year a little bit and got to carry the ball. So that was really fun to play some running back, and obviously I love defense, and I think defense was pretty fun that year. And we ended up winning a playoff game my senior year, so that at Henry Sibley. So that was cool too. And then senior year of wrestling was really really fun. I don't know. I think it was because I was playing, like, I knew I was gonna play lacrosse in college, and I was just kind of like, oh, this is my last year of wrestling ever. This is let's make the most of it. And I was cutting barely any weight. I weighed like 190, wrestling 182. So uh, that was fun. Just not cutting weight, and I ended up, that was my best year by far, and I was just having a lot of fun with it because I think the pressure was off, and I just started to not take it quite as serious. But I still like worked really really hard at it because it was fun to work hard at it. But yeah, taking it not quite as serious and just taking the pressure off myself. And then when that season was over, I just couldn't see myself not wrestling in the future. Actually,
You
uh,
end up taking third at the state tournament. Don't forget about that here.
yeah,
So
yeah, that was fun. The
yeah.
state, I finally did something cool at the state tournament. I finally wrestled really. Yeah, my quarterfinals match was pretty fun. I still remember that,
Oh yeah.
winning that match and just being able to hug my coaches because I was finally placed at the state tournament, and didn't have to have a sad ending at that XL Center. So that was pretty fun. And I think Kish mentioned something to me, or no, McClay mentioned that Coach Kish up at NDSU said something about me earlier that year. And then I remembered that, just kind of reminiscing over wrestling the couple weeks or a month after I was done wrestling. I couldn't picture myself not wrestling. So uh, I kind of had a big change of heart the spring of my senior year, and decided to wrestle in college
Mhm.
instead. So that was exciting because I knew I couldn't, and I'm really happy I did that because I learned a lot about wrestling in college too. So
Yeah, before we get there, just finish up with lacrosse here your senior year. So how'd that season go? And what was that like? You're making that, you're thinking you're going to play lacrosse in college, and then you kind of take a step back, and then you're going to wrestle in college, and then you're playing the lacrosse your spring season. So just walk us through what that last season was like playing lacrosse for Hastings High School.
yeah, that was a really fun year too. So it was kind of the same thing as wrestling because I like switched and was like, no, I'm gonna wrestle in college. So it took a lot of pressure off in lacrosse, and I actually had an even better year I had that was my best year, my senior year. It's supposed to be your best year because you're your oldest, but I thought I played to the best of my ability as a senior in lacrosse too, and I was second team all state in lacrosse that year, and that was really fun because I knew that was gonna be my last season of lacrosse ever, and I've been playing that year round since sixth grade. So
And you were the face-off guy, and I think you had like a 90-something% win rate at face-offs that senior year, right? Is that correct, or somewhere around there?
yeah, it was somewhere around there. It was definitely my highest was that year.
Hmm. That's sweet.
Hmm.
So then, I guess before we get to college then too, so thinking about your high school career, you're a three-sport athlete here, TJ, and I know these two questions are kind of similar. So if you could break them up, that'd be great.
Hmm.
What do you think? First question, then, what do you think one of your most rewarding experiences was as a high school athlete at Hastings? And the second one is your favorite moment as a high school athlete for Hastings.
Most rewarding experience. Well, we'll start with the favorite moment. I kind of already mentioned it, but it was finally winning in the quarterfinals at state just to see uh, kind of the monkey off the back. Kind of, I
Hmm.
don't know. It felt good to finally be able to place because I felt like I could have been there the previous 2 years, and it was just really nice to win in that quarterfinals and not have to win like in the wrestlebacks later
Yeah.
that night or the next morning. So, and then honestly, it wasn't even the win that I remember. I don't really remember the match. It's more just the hugs that I got to have with my coaches afterwards in the tunnel and stuff, and then being able to walk. I think me and Trey walked back to the hotel, and I think that was our last weigh-in too that night. No, we weighed in the next morning, but I
Yeah.
wasn't cutting very much weight. But I
Yeah.
remember buying like a jar of peanut butter at the gas station and chowing down on that with Trey, and we walked back to the hotel. And Trey was pretty happy for me too because that was my first time uh, placing at state, and I was excited to be in the semis the next day. So it was just more the interactions with the people that I was really close with that I remember the most about that time.
All right. So what do you think one of the most rewarding experiences was as a Hastings high school athlete?
Yeah, definitely. Like I mentioned before, but the friendships that you'll be able to bring with you for the rest of your life, just growing up with a lot of these athletes that you play together in all these sports, uh, a football team. Obviously, Trey is still one of my closest friends, and we were captains together in two sports uh, for wrestling for a couple years and for football for a year. So obviously we were pretty close. We were Trey J, I think was a common name, and obviously we're super close, and we were pretty similar. We both cared a lot about our studies and sports, and we both wrestled in college. And then my lacrosse buddies that I grew up with uh, for a long time. I played traveling lacrosse with like Eric Iverson, and we were super close because of that, and just being able to play all the way through our senior year of high school. And he was the one who convinced me in sixth grade to play lacrosse. So we had a lot of I would win the face off and run down and pass the ball to him, and he would score. We had a lot of those combinations, and it was just fun to be able to check in on them and see how they're doing in college and stuff. So
Nice. So I think you might have just answered this one too, but you can answer it any kind of different way that you want
mhm.
for a specific reason. But who do you think one of the best teammates was that you played with? And once again, this could be football, this could be wrestling, this could be lacrosse. If you want to pick one for each sport, that'd be fine too. And like I said, I always think about this one. This could be answered in a couple different ways. You know, the person that was a shoulder to cry on. It could be an older role model that you really looked up to, that you always try to model your behaviors off of. You know, someone that you always battle against in the room and always try to one up. Just someone that always just push you. It could be a practice partner. It could be someone that you competed for against a first spot. So, who do you think that teammate was in your life, TJ?
uh, it'd be hard not. I already mentioned Trey, but it'd be hard not to mention Trey. We were pretty close throughout our time in high school, and we competed against each other pretty much every day. And it wasn't just at wrestling practice or football practice, but it was in the weight room and like sprints and running and all. Obviously, he was better in some areas, and I was better in some areas. So it was always really fun to compete against him. But we were also together, like in a lot of things. Obviously, we were on the same team, competing with each other, trying to crush some guys on the other team. So it was really fun to do that with Trey. But I think Godswill Pepple deserves a shout out. He was a really awesome wrestling partner too. Just he wrestled with me and Trey a lot. Our senior year, even my junior year, and he wrestled with some really good guys, and he really pushed us. And just he started wrestling so late in his life, and just how quick he was able to pick up on that, and how he was still able to just use his freak athleticism. And it still would like scare me and Trey like every day. So I think he deserves a big shout out to Godswill Pepple.
Yeah, who there was someone, I don't know if it was one of you guys, but he launched someone one day and it was pretty eye opening, so yeah, he was something special too. Yeah, I love Goswell.
Yeah, you
So
gotta don't go upper body with him.
for sure. So you kind of talked about it a little bit too. You talked about that summer between your freshman and your sophomore year. You really hit the weights hard. And then we kind of mentioned maybe a little bit, I would say this goes into it too, that springtime between your sophomore year or the sophomore spring where you had that injury as well. So what other improvement processes went into that growth that took place? Do you think you had kind of a steady growth every single year? Was it a year that you just kind of really spiked up during that middle school and high school? And once again, what other habits maybe went into that? What strategies went into that? And why do you think you had why do you think you had the growth that you had during high school?
So I think it was probably pretty consistent growth from freshman to sophomore to junior year. Freshman year, I wasn't like amazing at anything, and then sophomore year, I would get a little better at every sport, and junior year, and it was probably just consistency and just trying to be the hardest worker. I think it's just uh, always showing up every single day as early as you can, and then always being the last to leave at any practice or anything where you can get better, like lifting. You can always show up a little bit before spark and get a lift in, and just all practice. You can always stay late, do a couple extra sprints, lift a little, grab a partner and wrestle for a little bit, do some face offs. So I think it was probably more consistency and just uh, being a little obsessive over that, and always wanting to put a little extra in that day.
For sure. So then you mentioned college as well. So you're planning on playing lacrosse in college, and things kind of switched your senior year. You ended up going to NDSU to wrestle. What do you think that? Just talk about that process. What was that like? Were you kind of looking at any other places? Was it kind of you? I know you're kind of running up against a wall there, being really late in your after your senior year, kind of deciding what to do. But just walk us through what that process was like, getting to NDSU and what other schools you looked at. Talk about college as well, your major, uh, in wrestling as well in college and what that was like.
Yeah, so mostly just looked at North Dakota State and South Dakota State. It was really late that year. The U of M admissions uh, process was completely closed to like their undergrad, so that was going to be out of the question. But I'm really happy I went to North Dakota State. South Dakota State was really awesome there too, but it was like a new coaching staff at the time. I think I was Damian Hans, like one of his first recruits. He got hired like a month before that, so it was kind of a newer role for him as a head coach. And Kish, Coach Kish, and staff there were kind of established and been there for a couple of years. And I really like the Fargo area, and the big hospital system up there drew me into it. So it was awesome, and I learned a lot. In my time in college wrestling, it was really hard, but it was awesome experience where I did learn a lot about myself. Especially like my redshirt year was really fun to just see a rapid change in my wrestling. I thought I grew a lot as a wrestler, and sophomore and junior year didn't go as well as I thought. I was the starter at the beginning of both years, and I ended up taking kind of a back seat. But my time, like kind of on the bench, I thought I learned a lot about myself too. I was big leader in the weight room. I really liked lifting weights, and I could carry a lot of energy into the weight room for my teammates that did have to make I had to make weight too, but didn't have to like compete later on in the season. But so I could carry a lot of energy into like the weight cutting workouts and lifting and all that sort of stuff, and not worry too much about competing, because I knew at that point my time was done as a starter that year. But it was really fun. I enjoyed being in that role as a teammate.
Nice. then talk about your major as well, and then let's just speed up from kind of when you stopped wrestling there to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I majored in biology and took a lot of those basic science classes, and I knew I wanted to apply to medical school from the start. So I took all those prerequisites throughout, and then I graduated college and was done wrestling. And now so I graduated in December and I've been done wrestling. And now I'm in my like gap year and a half, technically. If I do get into medical school, the first go around, I'm working in a Parkinson's research lab and volunteering at other fun places around Fargo in the hospital system. And it'll be a big application cycle this summer with my girlfriend. She's going to be applying to PA schools at the same time, so that'll make it really fun. We'll get into the same place and make it all work out, though.
Nice. Last two questions in for you, TJ. Taking up a lot of your time here. So
You're good.
maybe the most important questions that we got going on today. Not that I always say this, but not that your life and your growing up in your sports career weren't important, but these might be the most important questions we got here. So, all right. So if you could give parents or coaches 2 pieces of advice from your experiences, what do you think they would be and why?
I think a big thing is that not every single kid is there to win a state title or win a national title or whatever, at whatever level you are. That's for the coaches and the parents, and that some kids are literally just there to have fun, enjoy it, and they're there for the friends. And it might be that coach's mindset that they're there to win, but really sports is super important and winning is really, really fun. But I think it's always a good reminder that these are just games or just matches at the end of the day. And it's good to have perspective, and there's no need to tear that kid down or think that negatively just because maybe they're there for other things other than just winning at that moment. Then another thing would be there's a lot more that just goes into a day than like that specific practice or that game. Like people have a lot of things going on in their lives outside of practice, like a 2-hour practice or that competition that night, and a lot of things can go on. So it's always good as a parent watching or as a coach to understand that these kids do have lives outside of just competitions, and that can play a role in that. So it's good to be aware of that.
For sure. Last one then for you. If you could give 2 student athletes, 2 pieces of advice, what do you think they would be and why? And these could be kids like in your boat that are 3-sport athletes. They could be 2-sport athletes. Maybe they're just trying to sport for the first time. So what do you think would be 2 pieces of advice from your experiences?
I would definitely say is just to relax and I know it's hard to say it, but enjoy it and not put so much pressure on yourself, because the more serious that you think of it and the more pressure you think about how important it is to win in that moment, just the harder it is to win. Because my senior year were my best years, and that was when I put the least pressure on myself, and I just decided to have as much fun as I can. You can really let it fly, and it's just really exciting to do that when you can just relax. It makes things much more enjoyable in the long run. Then but what goes along with that is if you are going to work really, really hard at something, I think you have to enjoy the process of getting better, and just not just love the competition aspect of sports, but enjoy the practices. Just enjoy the process of the winning little things every single day. Just 1% better. It's fun to get a little bit better at something every single day. So it's important to enjoy what's going on each day in practice.
Nice. So that's all the questions I got for you right now, TJ. The final word is yours here. Anything else you want to add in? Anything I didn't ask you? Any other shout outs you want to give? The time is right now for it. So have at it.
Oh man. Well, I got to give a big shout out to my girlfriend, Kate, and our puppy, Hammy. He's having a heart attack because he's a bulldog and he just went on a really long walk. So I hope he recovers, but he's doing okay. He's about to eat some peanut butter and take a big nap for the night. So I got to give a big shout out to my girlfriend, Kate, for always being there and supporting me through the process of college wrestling and academics. And I've really appreciated that over the last couple of years.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you, TJ.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim.